What's up, guys? Welcome to part 3 of the Stankey Sports Show. I'm Jack Stankey, joined today with my new co-host, Jack McGowan. Jack, thanks for coming on the show today.
What's up, boys? Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So I know I haven't done anything NFL really related in both of my shows yet, so we're going to start it off with the Gronk trade. Gronk comes out of retirement, requests a trade from the New England Patriots down to Tampa Bay. What are your thoughts on him going down to Tampa Bay to join Tom Brady?
I think it says a lot about their relationship, Brady and Gronk. And I feel like, the Patriots, they were obviously sort of forced into trading that. If they kept Gronk, he had that $10 million cap hit. So, it was either they traded him or cut him. And obviously they're not going to cut him. They're going to get something in return. And I think they probably could have got a little more. He's arguably the best tight end of all time. They traded Gronk and the seventh for a fourth. I think they could have asked for a little more, but again, they didn't really have much leeway. So, I think it was okay. But I definitely think the Bucks, they obviously won the trade. So.
Yeah, so now that since Tom Brady's gone and Gronk's gone, it's an older team now. They didn't really make any big splashes in the draft because they traded out of the first round. Discuss the future of the Patriots dynasty with me. Is it over completely?
I definitely think it's in danger. This season, we'll see what happens with Cam. And in the second round, I don't even know, if they don't take a quarterback, we'll see. But I think they're in a weird spot because they don't really have anybody. They have Gilmore, who's one of the best corners in the league. If they suck, he's not going to want to stay. So, I do think that their dynasty, it's got to be over. Stidham, even if he has a good year, he's not Tom Brady. So, I think it's coming to an end.
Exactly, and we all know that what Bill Belichick did with Tom Brady was generational, and that he turned him such a great player. But, I'm not sure he could do that with a player not like Tom Brady. But the Patriots did trade out of the first round in the draft yesterday. Let's move into the draft a little bit. First overall pick was guaranteed Joe Burrow, quarterback LSU, to the Cincinnati Bengals. How will Joe Burrow handle being the first-round pick to a pretty bad team that went 2-14 last year after winning the national championship?
I think obviously he's not going to make – he will make an immediate impact. I think they'll be better. I see 5, 6, maybe even 7 wins for them because they have a good offense. I think they have a good foundation. They have John Ross, Tyler Boyd, A.J. Green. He's got guys to throw to, their defense sucks, but, I definitely don't see them. Getting another top 3-5 pick. He's not going to come in there and make them a playoff team immediately, but, I think the Bengals can make the playoffs in the next 2 to 3 years. I think they have a good thing starting.
Yeah, I definitely like the Joe Burrow pick. He won the Heisman. He was projected 6th round before his stellar season, breaking the college football record for touchdowns thrown and yards thrown for. But let's move on to the second pick now, where Chase Young, the defensive end from Ohio State, was selected by the Washington Redskins 2nd overall. How do you think he can come into a struggling but young team who's got some weapons on defense to use?
I think he's going to have a season like Nick Bosa had. Not really a bold statement to make. I think he will win defensive rookie of the year. He's not going to be he's not going to turn them into a playoff team. There's only so much he can do, playing on the D line. But I do think he'll have a really good year. He'll be like Bosa, have a lot of sacks, a lot of tackles. Because, I think he's the best player in the draft. I think if the Bengals didn't need a quarterback, Chase Young would have been the first pick. He's one of the highest rated players coming into the draft. He had the 99 rating. Only five players have had that. So I think he's going to be in the NFL for a long time. I think he's got a really good career coming up.
And, you bring up the same point that Mel Kiper Jr. brought up. On his big draft board, he said that Chase Young was the best player available. But, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals were picking Burrow because Andy Dalton was at the latter part of his career. But let me move on to the third pick now. I know you're a diehard Lions fan with family up in Detroit, Michigan. Jeff Okudah's taken. The Lions, their pass defense is not too hot right now. How will Jeff Okudah come in his first year, being one of the best corners in the league? How will he make an impact in the NFL?
I think since they traded Slay, you knew that they were going to take Okudah. They signed Trufant. And I think, obviously the Lions defense, they're still going to suck, but I think he's going to adjust pretty well. I think he's going to come in, I think he will make an immediate impact. He's going to start. He's going to get reps. He plays what Patricia wants. He's physical, plays good, man. I think he's really good. I think he's going to be solid for a lot of years to come.
Now let's move on to the fourth pick overall in the draft. There was a lot of talk that the Giants were either going to take Isaiah Simmons or an offensive tackle. They moved on from Simmons, which I think a lot of people expected them to do. But was Andrew Thomas the right decision to be the first tackle taken off the board?
I think we knew that I knew they were going to take an O-line. The fans wanted Isaiah Simmons, but at the end of the day, what Gettleman said, he said they need to protect Daniel Jones and Saquon. They knew that they were going to get an O-line, and it was between the Willis, Wirfs, or him. It's a safe pick. He's got a pretty high upside. I don't really think there was a wrong pick with those three. I think they're all three good offensive line, but I mean the Giants' offensive line is so dreadfully miserable that one guy is not going to fix all their problems. But, I think it was definitely a safe pick, and he's got a lot of upside.
Yeah, it's definitely a step in the right direction for one of the worst O-lines in the league. And when you already have Saquon Barkley getting the snap, getting the handoffs, a good O-line could really help change them into a different culture. But let me move on to the fifth pick now. The Miami Dolphins took Tua Tagovailoa with the fifth overall pick. He had some issues with him. He's injury prone a lot. There were talks that they were going to take Herbert. They decided to go Tua. Who do you think will turn out better, Tua or Herbert, in their NFL careers?
I think Tua will because, going into the season, people thought Tua was going to be, the first pick. And if it wasn't for Burrow's, historic season and, Tua's injury, you got to think Tua would have been the first or second pick. I like Herbert's spot, though. He's going to sit behind Tyrod Taylor, maybe a year or two, or if Tyrod struggles, he'll come in quicker than that. But I think they're both in good spots. I don't know if Tua's going to start immediately or he's going to sit behind Fitzpatrick, but I just think Tua is more talented than Herbert. So I just think he'll be better.
That devastating hip dislocation, and he messed up his head with that concussion and broken nose back in November. That really sent him down a little bit. He was projected to be the first pick before Burrow had such that insane season. But there were a lot still in this class keeping it to the draft. This was one of the deeper wide receiver classes of all time that we've seen in the draft era. Ruggs went first out of the wide receivers to LA, and then Judy went 15th to the Broncos, and then CeeDee Lamb went 17th to the Dallas Cowboys. Rank those three for me in order of best to worst, and how do you think they're going to play out for their new teams?
So I do think Ruggs is the worst out of those three. Obviously Ruggs is really good, and he's getting comparisons to Tyreek Hill, but I do think he's the worst, and I think he'll be good on the Raiders, but I just don't see why they would take him over CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. Honestly, I think it's the complete opposite of what they drafted in talent-wise. I would probably rank it CeeDee Lamb, Jeudy, and then Ruggs. Jeudy and Lamb are, they can go, 1 and 2 hand in hand. But I think Lamb is the best receiver in the draft. So I don't know why he fell to 17th.
And now there was a lot of talk that the Cowboys taking CeeDee Lamb with the 17th overall pick was just to kind of jab at the Eagles to make sure that they don't get him. Do you really think that's a true statement, or do you think they could use someone else?
I do think it was kind of, I'll keep it PG-13, a little screw you to the Eagles because, they really didn't need a wide receiver. They have Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, two good young receivers. They did not need CeeDee Lamb. I'm not really a big Cowboys fan. I don't really know what they needed, but they definitely didn't need a wide receiver, and they knew that if he fell to Philly, that's a dream pick for the Eagles, They just did not want the Eagles to have that perfect pick because he would have settled in perfectly in Philadelphia.
Yeah, the Eagles were forced to take that other receiver from VCU because CeeDee Lamb was not available on the board. But I want to move to another top 10 draft pick that was considered to be one of the best in the draft. Isaiah Simmons, outside linebacker from Clemson University. They showed the graphic last night while they were airing the draft that he played safety, he plays corner, he plays outside linebacker, he plays inside linebacker. What will Isaiah Simmons bring to the Arizona Cardinals after they made a splash in the trade market to get D-Hop? They already got Chandler Jones, one of the best defensive players in the league.
I think he can play anywhere. He can really play anywhere on defense. I think him falling to 8. You kind of knew what the top 6 were going to be position wise. It was going to be Burrow, Young, Okuda, O-line. Then they were going to go Tua, Herbert, and then at 7, the Panthers. I think they went Brown because I looked. They only had 2 defensive tackles on their roster going in. So, obviously the Cardinals got a little fortunate having Simmons. I think they could have went O-line, but I mean, you can't pass on Simmons once he's there. And I think, they can literally put him wherever they want to on defense, and he's going to be really good.
And that's going to be a solid team for years to come. DeAndre
I
Hopkins, Kyler
completely agree.
Murray,
Yep. And they were
Christian Kirk.
dangerous down the stretch last year. They won some games. They beat the Seahawks last year. And you can make the argument Isaiah Simmons, is the best defensive player in the draft outside of Chase Young. So, I mean, he is. He probably is going into the draft. So, I think that's a really good pick for the Cardinals. I think that's a scary team in this upcoming season.
And, he can make a splash immediately. But I want to also, staying with the draft, who do you think was the biggest steal in the draft that you think dropped a little too far down on the big board? Who do you think will make the biggest impact that wasn't really a top priority pick?
Even though the Cowboys have weapons, I mean, I got to say CeeDee Lamb was the biggest steal. I mean, going 17, arguably being the best receiver in the draft. Some people thought the Jets would take him, the Raiders. I do think that was definitely a really big steal. And I don't know how he fell that low. And I think that was a really good pick by the Cowboys, even though they have weapons. And then another steal, I mean, I got to say Jedrick Willis to the Browns falling there because, he obviously the 3 O-line, but, he was arguably the best O-line in that draft falling to the Browns. I think that's a really good pickup. I think this is a sort of a defining season for Baker. He's got his weapons. Now he's got an O-line. If he doesn't perform this year, I think the Browns got to consider, I don't know, that Baker's not it. But, he has no excuses this year. So.
Yeah, I was never a big Baker fan, but when I saw him drop to the 10th overall pick, now the Browns got some weapons on paper, and you mentioned the Cowboys' weapons. I mean, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Gallup. Now they got CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott. Even though Dak Prescott's got some issues with his game, and also his brother died earlier today, which was very sad to hear about. They're going to be an exciting team in probably the worst division in all football.
Definitely the worst division, and Dak, he's terrible, but he's got no excuses again. I think it's obnoxious. He's asking for so much money. He's not worth the money. But we'll see this upcoming season. He's again got no excuses.
Now I went with the biggest steal in the draft. Who do you think went too early? Who do you think deserved to go a little later?
Like I said before, I definitely think Ruggs went too early. He's good, but I just don't see why the Raiders would take him over Judy and Lamb. Obviously we knew that they were going to take a receiver, but I just don't agree with them taking Ruggs. And then the other one who went way too early, AJ Terrell to the Falcons. I just don't really understand that. I watched a fair amount of Clemson games. He's inconsistent towards the end of the year. He seemed like he got worse and worse, and I didn't see anybody saying he was a first round talent. It was a big stretch by the Falcons there. I mean, if they really wanted him, they could have gotten him second, maybe third round. So I don't know. I just don't agree with that pick by the Falcons.
Now, the last question I'm going to ask you, it's still NFL related, but I moved on from the draft a little bit. The NFC South is one of the more up-and-coming divisions in football. Who do you think is going to win that division? Saints, Bucks? Who do you think?
That's a tough call. It's going to go hand in hand. I do think both of those are going to make the playoffs. Whoever's not going to win that division will make the wild card. I think the Saints will probably win that division just because they've been together for longer. They have more chemistry. But I would not be surprised if the Bucks do take that division. On paper they are stacked. They'll probably get a really good running back in round 2 today. But I mean, I would not be surprised if the Bucks win. But I mean, just with the Saints, they've been together for so long. They've been so good. 13 and 3 seasons. It's hard to bet against the Saints.
Well, I'm glad I finally fit in a football segment, and you were the perfect guy to do it with. When we come back from commercial, we're going to talk about the most watched documentary in ESPN history, The Last Dance, the story of Michael Jordan. We'll be right back.
From our family to yours, we want to encourage you to keep going. Keep protecting what's most important. Keep hopeful in the face of all this. Keep believing. Keep being strong. Keep supporting the people on the front line. Keep staying together while staying apart. Keep being fearless. And most of all, keep dreaming.
Welcome back, guys, to the Stankey Sports Show. I'm Jack Stankey, still joined here with Jack McGowan, and we talked about the NFL draft. We spoke about the Gronk trade. We spoke about the NFC South a little bit. And before we hop into the most watched ESPN documentary of all time, The Last Dance, Timmy O'Hare, if you're watching this, just remember, Cowboys still not that good. 8-8, missed the playoffs last year to the Eagles. Get ready for another disappointing season.
Agreed here.
Yeah, exactly. And he's kind of being weird asking for all the money. But anyway, let's move on from that right now. And Jack, I want to talk about The Last Dance. It was one of the most crazed documentaries talking about, Jordan kept it on a private island. He said they didn't want to release it. Then all of a sudden the Cavs come back from a 3-1 deficit back in 2016, and all of a sudden he wants to release it now. What were your thoughts on watching the first 2 episodes?
I really enjoyed it. Obviously I am a LeBron fan, so that naturally, makes me not be the biggest fan of Jordan. But, I enjoyed the documentary, surprisingly. At first I wasn't even going to watch it, but I did watch it, and, I liked it. I enjoyed watching it. It was good.
And, I think that Michael Jordan and Jerry Krause's relationship was really one of the bigger parts of the first 2 episodes. As some of you know who watched the documentary, Jerry Krause was the Bulls GM for a little while during the championship run of 6 years. And, they've had some fighting between each other, but it was Michael Jordan at the time. So Jerry Krause kind of had to bow down and give him whatever he wanted since he was giving them the championships. But, let's move on to another one of the star players of that team, Scottie Pippen. There was a lot of rumors going on about him. He hurt his foot. Instead of getting surgery right after the season ended, he waited till the start of the season since he was the 122nd most paid player in the whole NBA. What are your thoughts on Scottie Pippen taking that time off?
Jordan in the documentary said it was selfish on Scottie's part. It was, but I mean, how can you blame him? It's easy for Jordan to say he was getting, 30+ million at the time. Scottie Pippen was getting like what, 2.5 million a year, and he was, a top 5 player in the NBA. There's no reason why he was, being that low paid. And, you got to look out for yourself. He grew up, poor, and so, you got to do whatever it takes to get money. That's why he signed that contract in the beginning. He had to secure it. He didn't want to take any chances. But then at that point, when you establish yourself as one of the best players in the NBA, you got to do what's best for you. So I agree with Scottie's decision. And it was kind of like, I'm going to keep it PG-13 again, like a screw you to the Bulls, like you have to pay me if you want me to play. So I agree with it. It's a business.
Yeah, Scottie signed that 7-year, only $18 million contract. And I like the point you brought up before. From Arkansas, very poor guy growing up, played with his brothers a lot. His dad suffered a stroke. His brother was killed. It's not a great life upbringing for Scottie Pippen, but he really made a name for himself in the NBA. So I'm glad for him. I'm glad that ESPN put an emphasis on how much of a role player he was. But
I agree.
Other than Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, what else, organization-wise, owner-wise, Phil Jackson-wise, what else do you think led to that great success of 6 championships?
I do think Krause he's got to get it because he brought that, before Michael Jordan, the Bulls, they said in the documentary, nobody was a Bulls fan. Nobody cared about the Bulls. They were Cubs, White Sox, like no one cared about the Bulls. They were in the dumpster. Then Krause, he drafts MJ, and then after like 2 years, he brings in Phil Jackson, and then he brings in Scottie Pippen. None of this is possible without Krause. He had that sight to bring in those guys. But now that being said, once Phil Jackson was there, I think he's got to be the most credited in that organization because, none of the players hated Krause. Even though he got all of it done, this wouldn't have been possible without him. But I think with Phil Jackson, it says a lot that he won 6 championships with the Bulls. And Jordan, at one point he said, I'm not playing for any other coach besides Phil Jackson. And it wasn't just because after the Bulls, he coached the Lakers and won another 5 championships with them, So he's the best coach of all time, 11 championships, one of the best coaches of all time. So I think he's definitely got to be credited more than Krause because he's with the players, he's coaching them. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think you both have to credit them, just as much because Krause is the one who brought in Phil Jackson. So, I think it can go either way, but I do think you got to give it to Phil once he was there. He made it all happen. So
yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Phil Jackson and Bill Russell are the only players or only people in NBA history to have 11 championships, more rings than can even fit on your own two hands combined. And, Phil Jackson, you spoke about his success with the Lakers after he left the Bulls, but Jerry Krause came up to him in the offseason in 1997 and said, Phil, I don't care if you go 82-0 and go 60-0 in the playoffs and win the NBA championship. This is your last year. What pressure do you think that put on him and the team specifically to go out and win that sixth and final championship?
I don't really understand why he would do that. Even if that that's going to be his last year, putting that out there, even like Jordan said, like that just puts like such a weird, mentality on the team. Like it's their last year, I don't agree with it. I think, Phil, I mean, for anybody, I think it put a decent amount of pressure on him. But, being such an established coach, at the end of the day, he knows he's not going to go jobless after that. So, I mean, I just think it was a stupid move by Krause's part. But for pressure-wise, I mean, because he was, he has 5 championships going into that year, I don't really think it put that much pressure on him. But it definitely, puts a weird point of view on, perspective on the game for everybody on the team.
And, he definitely didn't go jobless after that. Like we said before, 5 championships with the LA Lakers, with Kobe Bryant and Shaq on the teams for a couple of years. But in that 1997 season, which was one of the most dramatic seasons, which why the documentary was called The Last Dance, that's what Phil Jackson titled their final season together. Mm-hmm. Scottie Pippen in the middle of the year was talking about, I want out. Like, I'm demanding a trade. Like, what do you think was up with Scottie Pippen and his relationship with the Bulls, even though he was out there winning championship after championship after championship?
I mean, he was frustrated with his contract, and they wouldn't give it to him. Like I said before, you got to look out for yourself. He was pissed off at them. They didn't do anything about it. They said basically after this they were going to try to rebuild, getting rid of Phil and stuff. So, I mean, I agree with Scottie. You want to get paid, you want out, so be it. It's a business.
And, we spoke about Jerry Krause. We spoke about Phil Jackson, of course, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. What about Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Bulls? During the late 80s, he said himself, before Jordan came in, he wasn't that good of a player. Like the team, no, not that he wasn't that good of a player, but the team wasn't that good. Yeah. They weren't drawing any fans. Chicago was North Side Cubs, South Side White Sox. The Blackhawks were getting some fans. What do you think Jerry Reinsdorf did to bring in more players so that they can do that well?
I mean, I think it starts with getting Krause, and then once Krause, you get Jordan, and then, it builds from there. You got to give him credit also for getting Krause. It all builds up. He gets Krause, Krause gets Phil Jackson. So, I mean, you got to give him a lot of credit for finding Krause and rebuilding that team to make them, still today, the Bulls have been, they've been pretty bad for like our whole lifetime, basically. Yeah. And they're still one of the most valuable franchises in sports for that run, with Jordan, just because Jordan, they remain one of the most valuable franchises in sports.
And, you said that during our lifetime, the Bulls were never really that good. I mean, Derrick Rose, youngest player to ever win MVP, but other than that, they really haven't had that much success. So I completely agree with you there. But when we come back, we're going to call in one of my good friends, a hockey analyst. We're going to talk some Rangers Islanders with you. Jack, we're staying on. We'll be right back.
This may look like separation, but it's actually solidarity. It's sacrifice and service to the greater good. It's a sign that through isolation, we are fighting as one. And there's no better reason than that for hope. Hope is something we sports fans know all about. It's what keeps us cheering year after year for our favorite stars and our favorite teams, alongside our friends and family. And in football, the draft is when hope starts all over again.
You guys ready to get started?
Hope, the deep and passionate kind. Hope that the next pick will make this season the season. Hope that the next name called will be yours. But this year, we're hoping for more than a future star, a stronger line, or greater speed. We're hoping to fill a deeper need. With a future of full arenas, full voices, free reign, to gather, to feel the power of football together. Because that will mean life is back to normal for us all. So celebrate with these young men as they start their careers today. Looking forward to a stretch of glorious tomorrows. For this draft, we're not the Raider Nation or cheeseheads. We're not red and gold or white and blue. We're one football family. Sharing our hope with all of you.
NFL Draft begins Thursday, April 23rd on ESPN and ABC.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Stankey Sports Show. There were some technical difficulties going on with our last baseball segment, so I'm going to hold off on that until next week. But I want to give a big thanks to Jack McGowan for co-hosting here with me today. I hope you guys enjoy this video. It's my first time editing in a little while now, since 2017, I think it is. So hopefully you guys like the highlights I included. Hope you guys enjoy the video. I'm going to try and be here at least once a week during this crazy quarantine coronavirus time. So subscribe on Jack Stankey on YouTube. I'll give updates throughout the week if there's any changes to scheduling, but hopefully you guys are enjoying